Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is James Ellsmore from Island Innovation, and I'm delighted to join you for this session today, Voices from the Caribbean, Barbuda's Fight for Land Rights and Climate Justice. Um, this, I think, is a very important topic. Many of you may have heard about Barbuda and the specifics of this jewel of the Caribbean, this small island of under 2,000 people that is absolutely unique. And I'm delighted to invite our speaker, Chairman of the Barbuda Council, Mr. Devon Warner, to join me on screen. Mr. Warner is going to give us some of his first-hand experiences of living on Barbuda his whole life and be able to really share his experience leading the council as Barbuda has recovered from significant impacts from recent hurricanes and climate change, but also looks towards a future. Good afternoon, Chairman. Great to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, good afternoon. It is an extreme pleasure. I just want to wish you guys a happy 6th anniversary. And of course, to commend you and the work that you've been doing across the world to bring awareness worldwide and the challenges faced by our small island communities. I'm very excited for the opportunity, and I just hope that I'll be able to do justice by Barbuda in the half an hour that we have before us.
We have a lot to cover. Oh, you've disappeared. Hope you can come back on screen again. But I see people joining in the chat from across the world, from Jamaica, from Trinidad, from Haiti, from Dominica, from Portugal, from Mauritius, from Scotland. And I can see also that there is a poll being shared. So for those in the audience, if you'd like to share in the poll a bit of information about yourself, that would be very helpful. And I know there are many others following along on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. But maybe to start off this conversation, for people who may be less familiar with Barbuda, what do they need to know? Tell us the basics about the island for people coming to learn for the first time, perhaps, about Barbuda.
Well, Barbuda is an island in the Leeward Islands chain. We are sister island of Antigua, as a lot of people would know. And of course, we have had situations where a lot of people mistake us for the Bahamas, Bermuda, and Barbados. But Barbuda is that little island, 62 square miles, pink sand beaches, the frigate bird sanctuary, an island rich in communal life, traditions, and culture, and a must visit for those of us who have not been to Barbuda yet. You should put it on your bucket list and ensure that you get that opportunity to experience the beauty of Barbuda firsthand.
Absolutely. And it seems we've lost your video. I'm not sure why, but we can hear you. There
I
you are.
think, let's see what happens here now.
There
Okay,
we go. We
back
can
on.
see you, but we could hear you perfectly anyway. And
Okay,
so,
am I back online?
yes, we
Could
can
you
see
see the
you
video now?
and
Perfect.
we can hear you the whole time. So I think, I mean, there's many interesting things to discuss about Barbuda. Maybe we can just start with its political structure, just so people have an idea of how Barbuda is structured. Obviously, the smaller of the two islands in the state of Antigua and Barbuda, but also has a very unique aspect, which I wanted to talk about, or wanted to ask you to talk about, I should say, which is around the land tenure and the historic way that the land has been held there. So maybe we can start with that.
Okay, so Barbuda is part of the state of Antigua and Barbuda. We have a unique system where Barbuda is governed by an island council that has certain jurisdiction that gives us certain jurisdiction over the island of Barbuda. Unfortunately, there are times when the central government looks not to um, follow the letter of the law, if I may put it that way, when it comes to the things that goes on in Barbuda, where a lot of times we're left out of the communication. There's very little information that is disseminated to us. And of course, the Barbuda Council is left wanted. But the Barbuda Council Act gives us a lot of authority, and it speaks to, in part 2, it says the island shall be subject to the jurisdiction of the council, which is hereby vested with the powers set out in the Barbuda Local Government Act. So the uniqueness of Barbuda is based on the fact that we have a strong act that is vested in the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda, which means it's a creature of the Constitution and gives the Barbuda Council some serious authority when it comes to the day-to-day operations of the island of Barbuda.
Okay, that's very interesting. And so traditionally the land of Antigua and Barbuda, the land of Barbuda has been held in a kind of unique way compared to other islands in the region. Can you tell us a bit about that structure?
Okay, in Barbuda, we have for over 300 years practiced a communal style of ownership with regards to the lands of Barbuda. A Barbudan and becoming 18 is entitled to 3 parcels of land. 1 for agriculture, 2 for commercial use, and 3 for building of his or her home. So those are clearly set out in our communal land system. Okay. Unfortunately for us, the government would want to tell the people of Barbuda and I guess the world that this is a myth. But this is a myth. If it's a myth that we have practiced for over 300 years. Now you understand there's certain rights that comes with you being in a position, practicing a particular way of living. I think if you're married, if you're not married and you live for over 7 years, you enter into a common law relationship. And if you're squatting on a particular piece of land for X amount of years, there's certain rights that is afforded to you. So Barbuda and Barbudans have been practicing a communal way of land ownership for over 300 plus years. So based on that practice, those traditions and those cultures that were handed down to us over those 3 centuries plus, Barbudans have an indelible mark when it comes to the lands and how we feel about the lands of Barbuda and we as Barbudans are positioned when it comes to our way of life, our traditions and all that, and our connection with the lands as a common practice for those centuries of occupying Barbuda.
Mm-hmm. I think that's some very important context for what we'll come back to. Another question, I can see there's a few people in the audience representing ecology and specifically bird protection organizations. And I know that Barbuda is also very famous for its wildlife and specifically bird life, I believe. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? Because I know there are, and Lisa has just put in the chat a little bit about this from BirdLife Caribbean, but would love to hear from you, Devon, about the importance of the bird life locally.
Yes. I think outside of the Galapagos Islands, Barbuda have the largest frigate bird sanctuary in this side of the hemisphere. And I might want to be a little selfish and say maybe in the world. Very beautiful place. We also have other wildlife that we have, like the brown booby, pelicans. We have seasonally the seagulls that come to Barbuda to nest. After they would have left, they remigrate to, I think maybe as far as Australia. So Barbuda does, we have the whistling ducks, we have the white-throat ducks, we have birds that were brought in who have now have seen significant growth in the population. That would be the guinea fowls. We also have the fallow deer that was introduced to Barbuda, I think, by the Cadgentons. And we also have wild boars. So Barbuda is not just a fishing community. It's not just a touristic community. It's also a hunting community. And these are all the practices that Barbudans have practiced since slavery, basically.
Okay, that's important. And I can see that also in the chat, someone has mentioned the Barbuda warbler, the island's
Yes.
bird,
That,
which we
I
don't want to
slipped that
forget.
one.
Oh,
Yes,
you
the
did say.
Barbuda warbler. Yes,
Good,
yes.
good.
That is a very unique bird to us, and we're very proud to probably be the only island in the Caribbean that boasts the warbler.
Absolutely. Now, in I think 2017, the island was hit by Hurricane Irma, which obviously devastated the island and really was a pivotal moment in the last decade of the island's history. Changed a lot of things. Can you tell us about the impact of Irma on Barbuda and the recovery since then?
Okay, yes, Irma. Wow, Irma. I still have nightmares at times when I reflect. I mean, on Irma and the damage, the ravage that it did to Barbuda. Um, but I think the most important thing the most damaging thing was Barbudans being evacuated off Barbuda. We did not get the opportunity to do what we do as a people to exercise our resilience with regards to the rebuilding process and all that. Of course, we were taken off island for an extended period of time, which just removed that resilience that Barbudans had. We were here in Lewis in 1995, 96, somewhere around there, and Barbudans did what they had to do when it came to the rebuilding process. The fact that you were evacuated removed that self-confidence that you would have as a people to engage directly from day one into the rebuilding process. Now, when we came back to Barbuda, it was a matter of readjusting. You understand? Families were scattered all over Antigua. Children were in schools away from each other. They were basically faced with a different culture, different traditions, and all that. So that's, I think, more than anything else, had the greatest impact. Of course, I mean, you lose your homes, you lose your belongings and all that. But if you're able to scrape things together and start that rebuilding process as a community, it builds community strength. But the fact that you were removed and the excuse that there was another storm coming, yes, for me, it's neither here nor there, because we knew way beforehand that the storm had taken a more northerly course. And I think Barbudans should have been given that opportunity to start that rebuilding process straight away and build the resilience that Barbudans are known for.
So after Irma, I mean, there was obviously a huge rebuilding effort that was necessary and various other impacts, various other things that happened. Can you tell us about what unfolded after the hurricane and kind of the key developments in the years following?
Yeah, well, right after the hurricane, I think a couple of days after, we had donor agencies on the ground, Samaritan Purse, the UNDP, and other organizations of that caliber. They came and they started their putting things in place to assist Barbudans with the rebuilding process. But key again is that the time span in between the storm and when the actual rebuilding process got underway properly. I think that had more significant impact on us. And I must give kudos to Samaritan Purse. I must thank the UNDP and the Indian government and all those people that came on board to assist the Barbuda. And it was a rigorous rebuilding process once Barbudans would have been back underground in Barbuda, and Barbudans were able to start rekindling that community spirit when it came to rebuilding and all that. I mean, up to today, I don't think we are 100% yet. And I pray that we do not see any storms for this season, because that could place us in a situation where, it would be like starting all over again. And where we're at now, we're still rebuilding. You understand? So, yes, all these agencies came. Kudos to them. Thank them for coming in and assisting us. But my main concern is that gap where Barbudans were not underground to do what we have always done whenever a hurricane would have hit Barbuda. And this has been years of practice, years of resilient building as a community. And I think that period when we were removed off the island kind of weakened that resilience.
And that was how long?
I think it was a couple of months, about
Okay.
2 or 3 months for some people, and then people
Everyone
who
was
still
removed to
everyone was everyone um, were removed with the exception of a few people that hid, and then they were eventually removed forcefully off the island.
Okay. Okay. And it's important for people to realize that Barbuda is geographically somewhat removed from Antigua. They're not right adjacent.
30 miles actually.
30 miles, yes. I did try and make the visit to Barbuda when I was in Antigua for the SIDS conference. Didn't get to make it, unfortunately, this time, but I did see the time requirement and getting there in the rough ocean. It requires something. So obviously having everyone removed absolutely I can absolutely see how that created that barrier. So people then started to return. There've obviously been some developments on the islands over the last few years, and a few people are asking about that in the Q&A and in the chat. Barbuda traditionally, I mean, I know you had some small, kind of more localized tourism, but there's also been some changes that have been made there. How are things unfolded there? Because I know you've had some an important case recently in court, which I think people are interested to know about.
Well, we always had a vision when it came to development to Barbuda. We were always of the opinion that Barbuda's development should be one of a more sustainable type development, which would be development around the people and the population of Barbuda. I'm putting it out there right now. We're not saying that our CARICOM brothers and sisters would not be afforded the opportunity or should not be afforded the opportunity to work in Barbuda. But what I'm saying, our vision, the Barbuda Council's vision and the people of Barbuda's vision was always different to that of the central government, right? The central government always saw Barbuda as, well, as they say now, seeing baths and steroids. I don't know what that means. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. But what I find has happened is that the developments in Barbuda at the moment, they lack understanding of the stewardship when it comes to the island of Barbuda that Barbudans have practiced over the years. Our livelihood outside, our livelihood outside of the boundaries of these developments was not really taken into consideration. You understand? the I don't think these developments are that sustainable type development that we envision. I think what is significant for us to understand that a lot of the cultures and traditions that Barbudans practice and exercise over the years are being removed because of the influx of the different cultures that are in Barbuda today. The Venezuelans, just to name a few of the people who are on island working. And of course, we have a population of less than 2,000. And if you bring 500-600 people at any one time in a country with that smaller population, there is going to be a huge cultural shock.
Those are people primarily brought to work on the
Well,
airport
yes.
or the developments.
The airport, the PLH, the Barbuda Ocean Club, these different developments that are taking place in Barbuda. Now, these people just don't come to work. They intermingle. They have their practices, their lifestyles, and so on. And a population of 2,000 is very impressionable. You understand? You see, a different way of doing things, and young people have a tendency to gravitate to some of the different cultures that come in, and they lose sight of their traditions. You understand? I don't think the government embarked on what would have been a proper needs assessment study as to how do I develop an island with a population of 2,000? What impact will it have on the hospital facilities? What impact will this have on the accommodations that are available to this influx of people? All these considerations, I don't think, was seriously studied, and it has been causing severe reactions, on the ground in Barbuda.
Understandable, and it's a huge societal change in a very short period of time.
Short space of time.
Yes,
very short.
And so there's a lot of questions coming in. I'm just trying to see how we can approach some of those. But I think there's obviously been some reporting and stories about the changes happened in Barbuda. Someone asked about this term disaster capitalism, which maybe you've heard thrown around.
Yes.
I'll be curious to your view on that. But also to the privatization of the land, or some changes to this communal structure that you talked about before. What is the case for those?
Let me speak to the question of disaster capitalism. I think Barbuda is probably the greatest example of disaster capitalism. Now I say that to say this. While Barbudans were being evacuated off Barbuda because the island was supposed to be uninhabitable, while we were being evacuated off, construction teams were being moved on island. You understand? Now, these are people that would not have developed any resilience to whatever Barbuda might bring. We have the mosquito issues, whatever the situation the Barbuda would throw at you. But it was okay for them to start a development process on island in the absence of Barbuda. So I use that as a simple example of disaster capitalism. It feels to me sometimes that it was preconceived, and the window of opportunity was offered by Irma. With regards to the lands, yes, there are certain things that I'm not allowed to speak to because we have certain matters before the courts as we speak. But yes, the government is making a concerted effort to bring the traditional communal style of living to an end, which is going to again impact the culture and traditions of the people of Barbuda. Understand? And the Barbuda Council is 100% against that process. And of course, we, as I said, because of the legal challenges, I cannot go into details with regards to the adjudication and all those things that are planned to take place on island in Barbuda in the not too distant future, or basically has already started trickling in.
Yep. One other question came in specifically about the frigate bird breeding colony and the Codrington Lagoon, to know if the developments have impacted these habitats and the breeding grounds for any of the birds. I don't know if you know specifically to that one.
Okay, with regards to the frigate bird sanctuary, there's a development that is taking place less than a mile away from the frigate bird sanctuary. That I think will have some severe impacts on the birds and the sanctuary itself. This development has what they call a buffer zone, which covers the entire frigate bird sanctuary. And again, it goes back to whether or not there was an assessment done to see how these developments would affect or have the effects it would have on the daily lives and the livelihoods of Barbudans. Now, that frigate bird sanctuary has fords that takes place there on a daily basis, by Barbuda water taxis and stuff like that. If the frigate birds are impacted by that development, and we are of the opinion that they will be, that there's going to be some loss of livelihood right there, right? With regards, and the Barbuda warbler as well is part of its natural habitat. So these are things that we could lose, and we could lose in a short space of time. Now, that development as well, remember I mentioned the buffer zones just now. It has buffer zones that go seaward as well, which could impact the fishers that utilize the space within those buffer zones. And if those buffer zones are basically allowed to operate the way buffer zones operate, then those are livelihoods that are going to be lost directly. So how do we replace that? I mean, what happens when those livelihoods are lost? You understand? So these are some of the concerns. There's a challenge as well on that development that is being that is in the courts right now. So I would not want to speak too much to that, just to let people know that the Barbuda Council and groups in Barbuda are not sitting back idly and allowing these things to happen without challenge.
No, that's good to hear. And last question on the legal side, if you can say anything else, but it specifically there was the case that was recently won, I think around the rights of people to steward their land. Are you able to comment on the case that was won?
Yes, I mean that gives Barbudan the authority, and not only Barbudans. I mean, it's a precedent that's set for anybody. I mean, this is a ruling of the Privy Council that gives Barbudans and anybody that feels that they're being disenfranchised in any way, that opportunity gives them that standing to challenge. So Barbudans, yes, we're going to utilize that win, and hopefully from that win, we'll win a few more cases that we have in the courts based on the precedents that has already been established.
Okay, that's good to know. So just to look to the future a little bit, and as chairman or as the council as a whole, what do you see for Barbuda coming up in the future, or what would you like to see as the key opportunities to be, I was going to use the word developed, I don't think that's the right word in this case, but opportunities to be seized by Barbuda in the coming years?
Well, I did make a few points with regards to that, and I think there's simple improvements that if we can establish a relationship with the government and get the government to understand that development is not only the foreign direct investment. The development to me, the key development to me are the infrastructural development, which are key to the island of Barbuda. And this would be our road network. This is something that we have to improve. I mean, the roads in Barbuda are probably the worst in the Caribbean. The Barbuda Council is embarking on trying to start as small as we can with our financial challenges to start that process of developing the road network. We're going to be reaching out to all these developers. You're here, you're doing severe damages to the road network. So we think it's incumbent on you to assist. That is one of the conversations we had when we met with Cabinet on Wednesday last week, improving the road network. Very importantly as well, the medical services that is being offered on Barbuda. Now, with the influx of people, there is a lot of pressure on what is already a very fragile medical service um, system in Barbuda. And going forward, I'm hoping to see improvement in the dental facility, the hospital being brought up where minor surgeries can be done. The lab, I mean, it's ridiculous that in 2024, a Barbudan would have to travel to Antigua to conduct a simple blood test. Now, these are things that we need to put in place and to reestablish in Barbuda. Of course, we have to maintain that medevac system for serious cases that our hospital, is not in a position to deal with. But this is medevacs and so on is practiced worldwide. But the hospital must be in a position to stabilize and facilitate some simpler matters. You understand? And we have to set up that facility so that facility can deal with those simple matters. Where we are now, we're not in that position, but of course we're working towards it. Another very important thing is, if Barbuda is to survive, the relationship with the central government is paramount. The government cannot, based on the fact that the Barbuda Council has an act that is enshrined in the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda, the central government cannot continue to overlook the Barbuda Council. We are the first responders in Ireland, for want of a better phrase. When Barbudans see things happening in Barbuda, the first persons they reach to for information is the Barbuda Council. We're an island in Barbuda. We are responsible. Now, if the government refuse to have meaningful dialogue, and don't tell me that, oh, I sent you a letter, or I wrote to you. That is my mind is not consultation. That is not dialogue. Yes, I mean, some smart person would want to say, oh, but we contacted you. No, unless we are able to sit and reason as a people, and you can say to us as the central authority, this is what we're planning for Barbuda. What is your take on it? So we can have a kind of cohesiveness going forward. Unless we can reach to that point, the relationship between the central authority and the Barbuda Council, and by extension, the people of Antigua and Barbuda, is always going to be seen as one that is chaotic. You understand? So I am of the opinion that key, other than the road networks, bringing the hospital up to speed, and all these infrastructure development, scholarships for our students. I mean, I must compliment the Barbudan students. They did very well in the last CXC exam. Very proud of them. But we have these students coming out of school, and the Barbuda Council would like to know that when the government offers scholarships to students, there are 5 or 6 scholarships set aside for Barbudan students. You understand? So once we can get all these things put in place, and the government understand that Barbuda cannot or should not be left behind or be an afterthought. You understand? Then is when we would have said, okay, we're making strides. And the same thing with the developments. The developments must understand that we need access to our beaches. You can't close us off. Barbudans have lived a particular way, as I said, for over 300 years. We roamed this whole island. From every part of the island. As a child, my whole life, I mean, I would not trade it for anything in the world. Growing up in Barbuda was like growing up in heaven. I was able to explore every nook and cranny of this island. I was a fisherman when I was about 6 years old. You understand? I started going around the mangroves and so on and catching snapper and silver and all these kind of things. So we have that connection to the land. And what is happening, as I said, with regards to these developments, with regards to the culture, the YouTubing and all these kind of things that are now very prevalent in Barbuda. You know, if we cannot get a grasp on certain things and maintain certain traditions and practices, we're in trouble. And I guess that's a challenge faced by a lot of small islands, right?
I was going to say there's many things that I think are very interesting. When I've seen the story of Barbuda being reported, of course, the main focus has been on climate justice, climate change, the impact of Irma. But as I heard you talk, of course, people living on the island are also thinking about education, health, roads, and all these other things. So it's important to keep that in mind whenever we're talking about this. But many of the comments you said about providing those services to a small island community are things that have been echoed by other participants from other islands in different parts of the world. So no, many important points there, and you have a lot of fans following you in this audience who've made some comments and really appreciate your passion for Barbuda and the work that you've done. So, Devon, absolutely appreciate you joining us today to share the story of Barbuda and your own story, and really look forward to following that as things evolve over the next few years. And whatever we can do to support that as Island Innovation, we will gladly. Is there anything else you wanted to say just to
Just to
end
wrap
the
up,
session?
I just want to mention a particular way of life that Barbudans practiced over the years when it comes to the climate resilience and all that. And I think this is the key for this conversation. And it would be remiss if I did not mention it. Now, for years, Barbudans, we respected our mangroves, we respected our wetlands, and all these things that are so important in holding the ecology of the island together. Now, with the impacts of these large developments, we realize that a lot of our mangrove systems are being removed, our natural wetlands are being reclaimed, and I hate that phrase when somebody tells me about reclaimed lands. I'm lost. You understand? But what I'm saying is, I was born in the 60s. I grew up understanding the passion that my father and grandfather and all these people had and the closeness they felt with regards to the lands of Barbuda and maintaining it. And because of where Barbuda is positioned in the hurricane belt, Barbudans understood that these mangroves were there not only to provide food, but they were also to provide protection, right? So we protected the mangroves as best as is possible. In some cases, with our lives, because we knew the seriousness of having those. We also understood the need not to remove large trees, because Barbuda is very dry, and those large trees, we use to attract rain and stuff like that. So Barbudans were very smart when it came to that. The way we built our homes as growing up, I saw houses being built with that highly tilted roof. We moved away from that for a period where they went for style rather than security. And I guess we learned with Irma that it is important that not only be.
Oh, I think we lost you. Someone type in the chat just to let me know if it's just me. Yeah. We were doing so well up until then. I was very impressed with Barbuda's internet connection, but I just want to thank again Devon for his passion. And oh, are you back? You're back. Let's just say you're on mute. Just unmute. I was very impressed with Barbuda's internet connection up until then.
Okay, so
There we go.
is that my half hour?
Go on, I'll let you wrap up. Everyone keeps saying we need to give you more time, so we gone over time already. That's fine. We're all enjoying it.
I just wanna, you can put my information out there on your webpage, and if there's anybody that needs me to speak to them on a one-on-one, or if you have been situations where you have um, need for somebody to speak at a forum or anything to explain the Barbuda situation. We need to get a chance to touch on our spatial planning and all those things that we have developed in developing Barbuda over the years. But I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you. But anybody on this chat that needs to reach out to me, feel free to share my information, my WhatsApp information, my email information, and you're welcome to contact me at any time.
Absolutely. I've just put your email in the chat. So let me just do that now. But also, if people want to reach out to us, we can connect them to you as well. But really appreciate your insights there. One of my favorite sessions so far. I think your passion for your island is just absolutely fantastic. So thank you again for joining us. And just to wrap up this session, I just wanted to remind everyone, in case you missed it, that this week we announced our in-person forum taking place in St. Kitts and Nevis next year in May. So put that in your calendars. We hope to see many of you there. And of course, many of the topics we've discussed today will be on the agenda in St. Kitts. There's more information coming up in the chat, and we have a special discount available for all Virtual Island Summit attendees beyond the extra early bird discount. So the early bird gets the worm. Have a look at that. And a reminder that our next session coming up in a couple of hours, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, New York, 8 p.m. London, is in partnership with our friends at the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, focused on the circular economy, maximizing resource efficiency and minimizing waste. So we'd invite you to join us and the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund for a very interesting session coming up later today. Thank you again, Devon, for your time, and thank you to all of the audience for your interactions and inputs. Was fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, guys.